The sun had barely climbed high enough to burn the morning haze off the training grounds, but the heat was already settling into bones. It pressed down on the rows of recruits standing in formation, heavy and unforgiving, like the expectations placed on them. Boots were aligned to the inch. Rifles were held exactly as instructed. Every movement was watched, measured, and silently judged. This place did not forgive mistakes. The firing range stretched out ahead, a long strip of scorched earth and steel targets scarred by thousands of rounds. Each target told a story of who had passed through here and who had failed. Most of those stories ended quietly, with a transfer order and a career that never became what it was supposed to be. She stood near the middle of the line. She did not fidget. She did not roll her shoulders or flex her fingers the way some of the others did when nerves crept in. Her posture was calm, almost too calm, as if she were detached from the tension vibrating through the air. Her uniform fit perfectly, pressed and clean, but somehow that only made her stand out more. In a sea of hardened faces and confident stares, she was an anomaly. The command rang out. Targets popped up in the distance with sharp metallic snaps. The sound echoed across the range like a challenge. Shots followed immediately. Controlled bursts. Crisp recoil. The smell of gunpowder bloomed thick and sharp, burning the back of the throat. Brass casings hit the ground in a rapid clatter. She fired last. Not because she hesitated, but because she waited. When she finally squeezed the trigger, it was a single round. Clean. Deliberate. The instructor walked the line with a tablet in hand, eyes flicking from screens to targets. He paused when he reached her position. His brow furrowed slightly, the way it did when something didn't match expectation. Her target showed a hit just outside the center ring. Not a wild miss. Not sloppy. But not perfect. That was all it took. A sharp laugh cut through the controlled quiet. Then another. Low at first, quickly stifled, but not before it spread. A few recruits exchanged looks. Someone shook their head. Someone else smirked openly. Guess the stories weren't exaggerated. A voice murmured, not quite quiet enough. She heard it. She heard all of it. Her finger came off the trigger smoothly as she lowered her rifle. She didn't rush. She didn't show irritation. She reset the safety and stepped back exactly as protocol demanded. The instructor didn't hide his disappointment. You're off, he said, tapping the screen. This isn't basic. Precision is the baseline here. Yes, sir, she replied. Her voice was steady. No edge. No apology. That seemed to irritate him more. A few recruits glanced at her, then away, as if proximity alone might stain them. Others didn't bother hiding their judgment. This unit had a reputation. Only the best made it through selection. Everyone here believed they belonged. When someone appeared not to, it felt like an insult to the rest. She doesn't look like the rest of us, someone whispered. Doesn't shoot like it either, another replied. She stood still, eyes forward, jaw set so tight it might have cracked if pushed any further. She had learned a long time ago that responding only fed the fire. Silence, while it hurt more, denied them satisfaction. The instructor moved on. The next drill began almost immediately, but the atmosphere had shifted. Where before there had been sharp focus, now there was distraction. Eyes darted. Comparisons were made. Confidence curdled into something uglier. She felt it like a weight pressing between her shoulder blades. This was not the first time. From her first day here, the looks had come. The subtle pauses when she entered a room. The questions that were framed as curiosity but carried accusation beneath them. Where did you come from? Who recommended you? Are you sure your scores weren't adjusted? She had never answered more than necessary. Another command. Another round of fire. This time, she adjusted her stance by a fraction of an inch. She compensated for wind, for recoil, for the slight mechanical bias she had already noticed in the weapon. Her shot landed closer. Not close enough. A snort sounded behind her. The instructor exhaled through his nose and shook his head. That'll be all for you today, he said. Stand by. Stand by was never good. It meant waiting. Watching. Being watched. She stepped aside while the others continued. The sun climbed higher. Sweat trickled down her spine. Her hands remained steady, though her pulse ticked faster beneath her skin. She replayed the shot in her mind, not with doubt but with calculation. The rifle was pulling left under sustained heat. The ammo batch was inconsistent. The range markers were slightly misaligned. None of that would matter. All they would see was the ring she missed. Laughter flared again when another recruit nailed a perfect center shot. The contrast was not lost on anyone. See how it's done? Someone muttered. Her gaze stayed fixed ahead, but something dark flickered behind her eyes. Not anger. Not shame. Memory. She remembered a different range. A different sun. Dust that tasted like metal and smoke. Targets that moved because they were alive. A voice behind her, calm and unyielding, correcting her grip with a sharp tap against her wrist. Again. Slower. Breathe. The voice had never cared about rings or scores. Only results. Heavy footsteps interrupted the drill. They were slow. Measured. Authority made audible. The instructor straightened instantly. The recruits snapped back into rigid attention as if pulled by strings. Even those who had been whispering moments earlier went silent. The air shifted. She did not turn, but she knew who it was. Everyone did. The colonel rarely came to the range. When he did, it was never without reason. Cease fire, the voice commanded. The sound of shooting died mid-echo. Targets locked back into place. The sudden quiet was deafening. Boots crunched over gravel as he walked the line. He did not rush. He did not speak. His presence alone was enough to make hardened soldiers feel like they were being stripped down to their worst moments. He stopped. Not at the top performer. Not at the loudest voice. He stopped behind her. She felt it before she heard him. The subtle pressure of attention. The sense of being weighed. At ease, he said quietly. The command rippled through the formation. She remained still. The colonel did not address her immediately. Instead, he stepped past, eyes fixed on the target downrange. The one with the imperfect hit. He stared at it for a long moment. Too long. The instructor shifted uncomfortably. A bead of sweat slid down his temple. That's an interesting shot, the colonel said at last. No one spoke. He tilted his head slightly, studying the angle, the placement, the way the metal around the impact had warped. Who fired this? He asked. The instructor opened his mouth. Before he could answer, the colonel lifted a hand. His gaze remained locked on the target. I didn't ask you, he said. Slowly, deliberately, the colonel turned his head and looked directly at her. The silence after the colonel's gaze settled on her felt heavier than the rifle in her hands. It was the kind of silence that drew attention, that made people uncomfortable because it demanded answers without asking for them. She remained motionless, eyes forward, waiting. Years of discipline had trained her not to fill empty space with words. The colonel's stare lingered only a second longer before he turned away. No comment. No judgment. Just a quiet nod to the instructor to continue. Resume, the instructor said, voice tighter than before. The targets snapped back up. The drill resumed, but the rhythm was gone. Everyone felt it. The moment had cracked something open, even if no one understood what yet. She was ordered back into line. As she stepped into position, she felt eyes on her from every direction. Some were curious now, no longer amused. Others were sharpened by irritation. Being noticed by the colonel was a currency here, and she had just drawn attention without earning it the way others believed it should be earned. The next exercise was endurance-based. Timed movement drills. Weapon transitions. Stress positions designed to strip away composure and expose weakness. This was where people broke. The instructor barked orders relentlessly, his earlier confidence replaced by something harsher. He watched her more closely than the others, as if waiting for confirmation of his earlier assumption. She ran when told. dropped when told. Rolled, rose, fired, and moved again. Sweat soaked through her uniform, darkening the fabric across her back and chest. Her lungs burned, but her breathing remained controlled. Each step landed exactly where it needed to, conserving energy, avoiding wasted motion. Still, the comments came. Slow, someone muttered as she passed. Careful, don't trip, another said louder this time. A sharp elbow brushed her side during a transition. Not an accident. She absorbed the impact without reacting, adjusted her footing, and kept moving. Reacting would only confirm what they wanted to believe. Her performance was solid. Not flashy. Not attention-grabbing. And that, somehow, made it worse. Flashy was forgiven here. Solid but quiet made people uncomfortable. It suggested something they couldn't measure. During a short water break, the group clustered together instinctively, backs turned to her. Conversations lowered, then stopped altogether when she stepped closer. Someone laughed awkwardly, too loudly, then fell silent. She drank, eyes fixed on the horizon, letting the heat bake the tension into her muscles until it felt familiar. Pain was easier to manage than suspicion. She felt it before she heard it. "You don't talk much," a voice said behind her. She turned. One of the senior candidates stood there, taller than her, broad-shouldered, confidence worn like armor. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were not. "No, sir," she replied. He studied her for a moment, then smirked. "Must be nice," he said. "Not having expectations." She met his gaze, calm and unreadable. "We all have expectations," she said quietly. His smile faded. Before he could respond, the instructor called them back. The next drill was announced with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. A live fire simulation under stress conditions. Smoke. Noise. Timers. A scenario designed to overwhelm. This was the one everyone dreaded. "Listen carefully," the instructor said. "One mistake here, and you're done." A few recruits swallowed hard. Someone rolled their shoulders, trying to shake off nerves. She checked her weapon methodically. Magazine seated. Safety engaged. Everything as it should be. The whistle blew. Smoke erupted from canisters along the perimeter, thick and choking. Alarms blared, disorienting and sharp. Targets popped up unpredictably, some marked hostile, others neutral. The difference had to be identified in seconds. People rushed. Shots rang out in frantic bursts. She did not rush. She moved into the smoke low and controlled, using the noise as cover. Her breathing slowed instead of quickened. The chaos dulled at the edges as her focus narrowed. Then she heard it. A shout. Panic. Someone had dropped their weapon. A target swung unexpectedly into the open. A recruit fired too fast, too wide. The alarm tone changed. That sound meant failure. Or worse. The instructor's voice cut through the noise, sharp with anger. "Hold your positions!" No one listened. Adrenaline had taken over. Movements became sloppy. Fear crept in. She saw the problem before anyone else did. A simulated hostile had crossed into a blind angle. From the outside, it looked like nothing. From where she stood, she could see the trajectory of failure unfolding in real time. She adjusted without thinking. One step left. Knee down. Rifle angled slightly off-center. She fired. Once. The shot was clean. Precise. The target dropped instantly. The alarm stopped. Silence followed, broken only by heavy breathing and the hiss of dissipating smoke. People froze, unsure whether the drill was over or if something had gone terribly wrong. The instructor stared at his tablet, scrolling rapidly, confusion etched across his face. "What the hell was that?" someone whispered. She stood slowly, scanning the area, confirming what she already knew. The simulation was neutralized. No collateral hits. No safety violations. Her heart rate barely spiked. The instructor looked up, eyes locking onto her with something close to disbelief. "You fired?" he said. "Yes, sir." That target wasn't in your lane. It was in my line of sight, she replied. Murmurs spread through the group. That wasn't the instruction, he snapped. She said nothing. The colonel's voice cut in, calm and quiet, but carrying effortlessly across the range. It was the solution. Every head turned. The colonel stepped forward, eyes fixed on the fallen target. He crouched, inspecting it closely. His fingers traced the impact point, then paused. His expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. He straightened slowly, his gaze traveling from the target back to her. The space between them felt charged now, like a held breath. Some of the recruits shifted uneasily. The earlier confidence was gone, replaced by something uncertain. The colonel didn't speak immediately. He looked around at the group, taking in their faces, their postures, their reactions. Then he spoke, his voice measured. Who authorized that firing solution? He asked. No one answered. The instructor opened his mouth, then closed it again. The colonel's eyes never left her. She stood at attention, heart steady, waiting for the judgment she had faced her entire life. Whatever came next, she knew one thing. They were no longer laughing. And whatever the colonel had seen in that shot, it was not something that could be unseen. The colonel did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. Authority settled around him like gravity, pulling everyone's attention inward until there was nothing else to focus on. The range felt smaller now, compressed by the weight of the moment. Smoke still clung to the air in thin gray strands, drifting lazily as if unaware that something irreversible had just occurred. He stepped closer to the fallen target. Boots crunched softly over gravel as he circled it once, slow and deliberate. His eyes moved not like someone inspecting damage, but like someone reading a language he hadn't seen written in years. He crouched again, brushing soot from the metal plating with 2 fingers. The impact was clean. Almost surgical. Not center mass. Not instinctive. Intentional. Behind her, someone shifted their weight. Another swallowed hard. The silence stretched, taut and uncomfortable, until it felt like it might snap. That wasn't standard doctrine, the colonel said at last. The instructor stiffened. Sir, she fired outside her assign. The colonel lifted one finger. The instructor stopped mid-sentence. That shot, the colonel continued, still looking at the target, wasn't about neutralizing what was visible. He stood and turned slowly. It was about eliminating what everyone else missed. His eyes found her again. She did not look away. For the first time since arriving at the program, she felt something unfamiliar stir in the air around her. Not suspicion. Not dismissal. Interest. Explain, the colonel said. She inhaled once, steady and controlled. The target crossed a dead zone created by overlapping lanes, she said. Everyone else was tracking what they were assigned to see. That left an opening. And you, he prompted. I adjusted, she replied. Before it became a failure point. The colonel studied her face closely now. Not searching for arrogance. Not for fear. Something deeper. You didn't hesitate, he said. No, sir. Why? She paused. Just long enough to choose honesty over safety. Because hesitation would have gotten people killed. The words landed heavier than she intended. A ripple moved through the group. Some faces hardened. Others went pale. This was still a training exercise. Everyone knew that. But the truth beneath her answer was impossible to ignore. The colonel turned back to the target. He leaned in closer this time, angling his head, examining the burn pattern around the impact point. His jaw tightened slightly, the way it did when a memory resurfaced uninvited. This mark, he said quietly. He straightened. Most of you won't recognize it, he continued, voice carrying now. That's not a failure on your part. You were never meant to. Confusion spread openly across faces now. Someone glanced at the instructor, searching for reassurance and finding none. There was a unit, the colonel said, that operated outside conventional structure. No insignia. No public record. Their doctrine wasn't written down because it couldn't be taught. His gaze never left her. It had to be survived. A low murmur rippled through the line. The colonel stepped back, folding his hands behind his back. That firing pattern, he said, wasn't random. It's a confirmation mark. A way of saying the threat was assessed, anticipated, and removed without collateral. He paused. We called it the Black Viper mark. The name hit the air like a shockwave. Someone inhaled sharply. Another recruit whispered something under their breath that sounded suspiciously like disbelief. The instructor looked genuinely unsettled now. Sir, he said cautiously, that program was shut down years ago. The colonel nodded. Yes, he said. Officially. His eyes flicked back to her. Unofficially, he continued. The people who survived it carried it with them. The colonel took a step closer to her. The distance between them felt suddenly intimate, charged with unspoken history. Who taught you that? He asked. The range went utterly still. This was the moment she had always known would come. The question she had been waiting for, and dreading, in equal measure. She swallowed once. My mother, she said. The words were quiet, but they cut clean. A few recruits stared openly now. Others looked away, suddenly uncomfortable, as if they had intruded on something personal and dangerous. The colonel's expression changed. Not shock. Recognition. He studied her again, but now there was something else in his eyes. Something heavier. Regret, maybe? Or respect earned too late. She was never listed as a trainer, he said slowly. She wasn't, she replied. She was an operator. Silence. She didn't survive the program, she added, voice steady despite the weight pressing against her chest. The instructor opened his mouth, then thought better of it. The colonel looked away for a moment, gaze drifting toward the horizon beyond the range. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. Few did. He turned back to her. And you, he said. You weren't trained like the others here, were you? No, sir. Too controlled, he murmured. Too precise. You don't shoot to impress. You shoot to end things. A shiver ran through the line. No one laughed now. No one whispered. The colonel nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. You missed earlier, he said. Several heads snapped toward her. The accusation hung there, sharp and exposed. Yes, sir, she said. The colonel's lips twitched slightly. On purpose, he said. She met his gaze. Yes, sir. A breath rippled through the group. Why? She hesitated this time. Not out of fear. Out of calculation. The rifle pulls left under sustained heat, she said. The ammo batch is inconsistent. I needed to see how it behaved before committing to precision. The instructor stared at her like she'd spoken another language. The colonel smiled faintly. You were mapping the weapon, he said. Yes, sir. And you accepted the ridicule, he said, to get your data. She did not answer. She didn't need to. The colonel straightened, turning to face the others. Most of you chase perfection, he said. You fire for scores. For validation. His gaze swept across the line. She fired for understanding. The words landed hard. He turned back to her one last time. You weren't failing, he said. You were evaluating. Her chest tightened, not with pride, but with something close to release. The colonel nodded. Stand by, he said. The phrase meant something different now. As he walked away, the range remained silent. No one spoke. No one laughed. No one dared. She stood where she was, rifle steady at her side, feeling the shift settle around her like a tide turning. They hadn't just seen her skill. They had seen her lineage. And they finally understood that whatever she was, she had never been behind them. She had been ahead the entire time. The order to stand by stretched far longer than anyone expected. Minutes passed, then more, the sun continuing its slow climb as if the world had not just tilted on its axis. No one spoke. Even the usual small movements, adjusting a strap, shifting weight from one foot to another, seemed inappropriate now. The range had become a place of waiting, and waiting demanded stillness. She stood exactly where she had been left, rifle resting against her thigh, eyes forward. Her breathing remained slow, measured, as if she were counting time in a way no one else could see. The tension around her felt different now. Not sharp. Dense. Like the quiet before something is finally acknowledged. The colonel returned with a thin folder in his hand. It was unmarked. That alone was enough to draw every eye. He stopped in front of the formation and held it up without opening it. The instructor watched him with a mixture of apprehension and confusion, clearly unsure whether this was a lesson or an indictment. "This," the colonel said, tapping the folder once with his finger, "does not officially exist." A few recruits exchanged uneasy looks. "It contains operational reports from a defunct program," he continued. "A program that demanded absolute precision, emotional restraint, and the willingness to be forgotten." His gaze moved slowly, deliberately, until it found her again. "Most who entered it didn't leave," he said. "Those who did were never the same." He opened the folder. Pages fluttered in the light breeze. Redacted blocks of ink covered names, locations, entire missions. But what remained visible told its own story. Dates. Casualty numbers. After action summaries written in a tone too clinical to hide the cost beneath it. The colonel turned the folder slightly, just enough for the instructor to see. The instructor's face drained of color. "I trained some of them," the colonel said quietly. "Before the program was buried. Before the survivors were scattered and silenced." He closed the folder and tucked it under his arm. "Your evaluation," he said, addressing the group, "was never about marksmanship alone. It was about judgment under pressure. Awareness. The ability to see beyond what you're told to see." He paused. "Some of you performed well," he continued. "Some of you performed loudly." A few jaws tightened. He turned back to her. "And some of you performed honestly." She remained at attention, heart steady, face unreadable. The colonel stepped closer. "You were never behind," he said. "You were never struggling." He raised his voice slightly so everyone could hear. "She was testing the environment. The weapon. You." A murmur rippled through the formation, this time filled with something close to disbelief. "Every shot she took," the colonel continued, "was a question. And when the answer mattered, she responded without hesitation." He let that settle before adding, "That is not something you can teach in a classroom." The instructor swallowed hard. "Sir," he said, choosing his words carefully, "her earlier performance was deliberate," the colonel cut in. "And it exposed more than you realize." He turned to the group again. "Some of you laughed," he said calmly. No one moved. "Some of you assumed," he continued. "And some of you decided she didn't belong here before she ever had the chance to prove otherwise." His gaze was steady, unflinching. "That," he said, "is a liability." Silence followed. The colonel exhaled slowly, then looked back at her. "You carry a legacy," he said. "Not one you asked for. Not one that protected you." She felt something shift in her chest at that, but she did not let it show. "You were raised inside doctrine most people here will never see," he continued. "And instead of using it to dominate, you learned to disappear." He nodded once. "That takes discipline." He stepped back and addressed the formation one last time. "This phase of selection is complete," he said. "Those who were here to be impressive will find that's no longer enough." His eyes flicked to the instructor. "Adjust your metrics," he added. "Yes, sir," the instructor replied quickly. The colonel turned away, then stopped. He looked over his shoulder. "Lieutenant," he said. She straightened instinctively. "Yes, sir." "Fall out and report to my office after debrief." A sharp intake of breath moved through the group. "Yes, sir," she said. When she stepped out of formation, the space she passed through felt charged. No one spoke. No one met her eyes. The earlier arrogance had evaporated, replaced by something more fragile. Respect finally earned. Not given. As she walked away, she felt the weight of the folder even without seeing it. She felt the ghosts of things that had never been recorded, of people whose names were missing but whose methods survived. Later, when she stood alone in the colonel's office, he did not speak immediately. He gestured for her to sit, then took his own seat across from her. "You could have hidden forever," he said. "You chose not to." She considered that. "I chose to be ready," she replied. The colonel nodded. "Your mother was," he said. "She saved lives. More than anyone will ever know." Her jaw tightened, but she did not break. "She deserved better," the colonel added quietly. "Yes, sir," she said. He leaned back slightly. "The unit needs people who can see what others miss," he said. "People who don't need applause to function." He looked at her steadily. "Welcome," he said. She stood and saluted. When she left the office, the sun was lower, casting long shadows across the base. The range was empty now. Quiet. She paused for a moment, breathing in the air, feeling the weight of what had been acknowledged at last. They had laughed because they didn't understand. They had doubted because it was easier than admitting their limits. But respect, she knew, did not arrive with noise or spectacle. Sometimes it arrived slowly, stamped in precision, and paid for long before anyone was watching.